Good morning from the beautiful marina Yasmin Hammamet, just south of Tunis, Tunisia. It took us a little bit longer to get here than I thought, but we made it. Last time we did a video, I promised to tell a story about our first night anchoring out. That was after the very long trip and weather much heavier than we expected. But before I get started, do me a big favor and like this video and subscribe if you want to hear more of our misadventures, because trust me, we've had a lot of misadventures over the last 20 days getting from Rome here to Tunisia. But without further ado, here's the tale of our first night anchoring out. Now, over my shoulder, that is our anchor windlass. And let me tell you right now, I love our anchor windlass. Now, when we first got the boat, I didn't do enough work with the anchor windlass. I should have done a lot more. I should have done a lot more practicing. Unfortunately, I think I let my previous experience color my cavalier attitude towards anchoring, because, I mean, really, how hard can it be? You go out into the middle of the ocean, you drop your anchor, you put out some chain, and you stay where you want to stay. Yeah. So our first night, like I said previously, it was forecast for 3-foot seas. They ended up being about 6-foot seas with swells as high as 9. The wind wasn't bad. I mean, it was 12 knots, and I had already put a reef in the sail, so we sailed perfectly. The heel was fine. We had a little bit of rolling with the swells because they were coming in from behind, but we really did a good job, I think, sailing. Connie might disagree with that because it was rougher than she expected. Sorry, honey. So we spent most of the day sailing from Rome, south of Anzio, to a point that, looking on the charts, I thought would give us an adequate protection from the swells and what little wind we had. Boy, was I wrong. Like I said before, we had at least 6-foot swells, and we got behind the little rock outcropping and the castle, and we probably still had 4-foot swells hitting us. Now, the good news is I set the anchor, and it was in sand, and we were in 5 meters of water, and put out 30 meters of chain, and it held. The anchor did not give. The wind and the swells, we were facing right into them. The problem is the bow of the boat was lifting in the swells and then slamming back down, and then lifting and then slamming. And this was all night long. It was a very long night, but that's not the most exciting part. Somewhere in the middle of the night, I want to say it was maybe 1 a.m., we heard this most incredibly loud bang. It sounded like an explosion, and it vibrated the whole aluminum hull of this boat, and I thought something had washed into us. I mean, I'm just saying, oh my God, what's going on? Of course, I was woke from a semi-stupor sleep because the banging of the hull on the water was just that intense. And Connie lets out this cry. The anchor chain's letting out. And I'm like going, oh crap. Because, we have 80 meters of anchor chain, but when you get to the end, your anchor and chain is gone. And there was no way I would ever be able to find it again if we'd lost it. There's other problems involved, and I'll get to that in a moment. So I didn't know what had happened. Well, when you anchor, you add... Let me step back up. I ran as best as I could on a pitching deck and barefoot on a slippery, wet deck up to the forecastle. And the anchor chain was, in fact, peeling out. Now, it wasn't going out like we were going to run into the beach or nothing, because we were probably 2 miles from the beach. But it was, we were in danger of losing our whole anchor chain. And it's every time the bow goes up, it goes clack, 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 clack. And I'm sitting here, what had happened is the snubber, and when you anchor, you tie a rope off with a shock absorber to help take that motion off of your chain, so you're not putting so much pressure on your windlass. Well, what had happened was the snubber had come off, and when the snubber came off, the force of that big rubber band slapping against the hull was the loud explosion part. That, and I had tied 2 small lines onto the chain to help take some of the weight off of the winch. So, and it basically, I'm not going to try to show you, but basically it's a ski rope tow line. So I'm yelling at Connie, who can't barely hear me through the deck, to haul in, take in some slack. And I'm sitting there struggling, trying to hold the anchor chain before it peels all the way out. I learned that night I cannot move this 8-ton boat by myself. I could make some advance on the chain when the seas were right, but I would lose it quickly thereafter. Well, she started trying to pay in or haul in on the anchor windlass, and nothing was working. The anchor windlass was working, but the Wildcat was not engaged. And I'm just freaking out because we're going to lose our anchor chain. I mean, it was still a long time till dawn. I was afraid we were going to have to get underway in the dark. There was just a myriad of concerns going through my mind. The biggest one is when the anchor chain comes out of the chain locker, it can cause a whole lot of damage if it's going fast enough, and my body was in the way. So I was finally able to stop the anchor paying out long enough to get the snubber back on it and get the snubber to take hold. And we stopped the anchor from losing the anchor in the chain. But for the rest of the night, I was sitting there going, okay, the anchor is not coming up. I'm not strong enough to pull the anchor up by myself. What are we going to do? And I couldn't for the life of me figure out why the windlass wasn't working as it should. And that was until I started thinking about the windlass and its design. And if you look, it has that star on the top. And originally I thought that was if you lost power, you use a winch handle and you pull. You can crank it up manual. That's not what it's for. The next morning I got up, I got my winch handle, and I tightened it down. And that is the fitting that takes it from being engaged to being disengaged, which I never took the time to learn beforehand. Unfortunately, I had to figure this out in the middle of a pretty good storm, which was really stupid of me. Got the winch tightened down, fired it up, and it worked perfectly. And it's worked perfectly ever since. I changed snubbers, one from a devil's claw to a regular chain hook, and since I've changed the snubbers, I haven't had a problem with that slipping off. And we've had some pretty rough seas to anchor in, and we've done a wonderful job so far of not dragging anchor. Oh, the things that we learn at the worst possible moment. Anyway, that was our first night at anchor. And now, whenever we anchor, and if it's a little rough or it's a little rolly, we can say, hey, look, it's not as bad as that first night. And we don't complain nearly as much about the rough seas or the rough anchorages. Thank you for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed my story. Hopefully I was a little more awake this time than the last time I did a video. We will be here in Tunisia for at least a few weeks because we need some work done on the saga. Electricity and power management is becoming a major issue for our boat, and that will be a discussion for the next video. Have a lovely day and good luck.